And we are live. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to both Tom and Shadow for popping in. I know I have several other people who are going to join in, and you know, I don't want to say who's going to come in until they actually pop in. Just in case anything happened that because they're not here in either this time zone or whatever, but I've invited quite a few people that I think bring um, various perspectives to this issue that has arisen on uh, December 28th, I believe, was the first response from Troll Lord Games. And the attention that this response had received, I think, was disproportionate. I think, didn't quite pick up on the context of what the response was, and so forth. So, I'm going to begin with just a little bit of setup. So, one of the writers, and I'm not going to mention who the writer is, because I think that he's been very apologetic for it. He took down his original tweet, and he's made several follow-up tweets. And Troll Lord Games decided not to put his name out there either in their response. And so I'm not going to do that today. Now, you can certainly, anybody can certainly go in there and dig a little bit and find out who it was. But, and I'll get on later on to my perspective of what that, what the problem with those statements was as well. And I'm going to keep on bringing people in. So, okay. And hello, RPG Pundit. Welcome.
Oh,
yeah, we're already live. Sorry. Yeah, we're already live. So,
screw it. I'm Iron Man.
Oh, sorry about that. I didn't.
That's okay. That's okay. It was like, that I was just going into the back room or something.
Yeah. Oh, no, sorry about that. So anyway, we have Tom here from Tabletop Tap Room. We have Shadow from Shadow and Son. I'm expecting Miguel and possibly Sylvia from the Red Room. And quite a few others have asked to pop in. And I was just doing a little setup without the one thing I haven't mentioned is I haven't mentioned the name of the Troll Lord Games writer who kind of began this firestorm. And the reason why I chose not to name him is because he retracted his original tweet, was very apologetic about it, and Troll Lord Games has not, released his name either, but they made a very generic comment. And so let me bring in Miguel and Sylvia.
Hello.
Hello, Miguel and Sylvia. How are you? And I know you probably know several of the people in here already.
Yes.
So yeah, we're going to get quite a crowd in for this. And, I just wanted to, because I've had, such a good experience with Troll Lord Games. I actually had Stephen Chenault on my channel, interviewed him for almost 2 hours. He's a stand-up guy, and I'm sure Davis is as well, even though I've never had the privilege of talking with him directly. But it's such a great game company out there, and the fact that their comment was received by a segment of Twitter is in such a negative way, I think really deserves not only support for Troll Lord Games, but a response from, those of us that I think are much more level-headed. And I'm not even going to say where, any of us kind of lean, because I went to, a number of people that aren't necessarily from, one side or the other. I think the one thing we all have in common is that we're all gamers first, and we all, focus on the quality of the game rather than, the other stuff revolving around, our hobby. So I'll just let everybody, introduce themselves, and then I'm going to throw up the actual tweet that caused this little firestorm, and I am going to qualify it as a little firestorm, and I'll get to that as well. But we'll just go straight across whatever, I guess, Shadow, then Tom, then RPG Pundit, and the Red Room.
So howdy, folks. Nice to meet all of you. My son and I, we do a gaming, crafting, painting channel. We try to keep it, really wholesome and really, game and craft and painting focused. That's what it's all about. Just this is our passion. This is our hobby. This is what we want to, share with the world. My experience and his, this for him. He's 14. He's just growing up into this hobby, and I want him to experience all the good stuff and leave the other stuff. That's for farther on down the road. He can make up his decisions in his mind on, the real world. But for a family hobby, let's just keep it, fun. That's what it should be all about. Anything else added to the discussion is just detracting from the overall enjoyment of everybody out there.
Hi, I'm Tom, a.k.a. Gerion, and I started Tabletop Tap Room last year. Wasn't sure if I wanted to get into the whole vlogosphere, but I got trolled by somebody, and they really irritated me, so I says, that's it, I'm doing a video. And then the rest just was snowball rolling downhill. Yeah, gaming, into gaming, love gaming. Love the crafting side. That's my New Year's resolution, by the way, Shadow, is I'm going to paint and do more miniatures. And so this is where I come from, is more of a sci-fi than fantasy version. But I love the gaming and the war gaming.
That it? Okay.
Go ahead, RPG.
All right. Hello. I'm the reason why this video is going to get a shit ton of views. I'm the RPG Pundit, the final boss of internet shitlords. And this was kind of an accident because I got here a little bit late, and I just somehow went straight into the channel instead of having time to turn off my camera. But, it's actually something I'd been thinking of doing somewhere at some point soon, because you've got, one of the things that happened during the Troll Lord situation, right, is that once these people started attacking Troll Lord games, all of these little Stalinists, I came on there to defend them. They were accusing Troll Lord of being cowards because they just pretend to be neutral, but they're actually, being neutral means you're actually a bigot or something, a Nazi. And they said, but you're too much of a coward to admit what you really believe, right? and to face us. And so I put on that meme of Doc Holliday from Tombstone saying, well, I'm your Huckleberry, and I came on there and I started attacking every single one of these fuckers. And in turn, of course, they tried their typical sad little tactic of trying to dox me. So, there was a time when I wanted to try to be careful about showing too much of myself, but any necessity of that, like, I still do it now because I don't want my channel to be about me being a celebrity or something. Like, I think most of you would rather be looking at Meatball's head right now rather than mine. For anyone who doesn't actually follow my channel, but if you don't follow my channel, you better go over there and subscribe. But what I wanted to make a point of is to say that there's nothing that you can do to me. There's nothing that any of these people can do that will stop me, or that will even at this point hurt me. So, fuck it, I'm Iron Man. I guess that's it for my introduction.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because Aaron's dragon already picked up on that, on that fact. So he thought you were Meatball pretending to be a human.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go on. I think next up is the Red Room, followed by Raven.
Okay, no, I'm just gonna. Okay, no, don't do that. But I thought we weren't live because Pandit had his camera like, but
Yeah.
are we live already?
It was an accident.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about troll games. I never bought anything from them yet, but I have the free PDFs they offered because of Raven. Because when they did their promotion, he was saying, "Oh, they are offering." So I bought them. I'm gonna browse them soon, and probably one of my next orders are going to be the troll games books. And I had a lot of fun, desiccating the content, the comments of the woke crowds. I didn't engage with them because I have no patience for that at this point. But yeah, I loved shaking it, and I loved seeing other people take them on.
Well,
You can introduce yourself to start.
yes,
You do
of
that.
course.
You are
on reverse.
exactly.
Okay, so we are the Red Room, and we started the channel. I think it was 1 year ago. Yesterday. So it's kind of an announcement. We are 1 year old as a YouTube channel, but we are also a publisher for 7 months now, and lots of books. And that's it. That's our announcement. And of course, she said already that we don't have any Troll Lords material, any books
Yet.
Yes, of course. But now we are interested in knowing something more about them,
In supporting them.
Yeah, of course, that's also a reason.
Their games are all right. That's all I can say.
Well, the thing with Castles and Crusades, I will jump in on that. Yeah, yes, the player's handbook is free, so you can get the 7th printing for free, the PDF of it. They have a variety of ways that you can get their hardcovers as well. Sometimes they'll sell them on discount. They'll sell them, if there's if they're having a fire sale kind of thing on them, or if they have slightly damaged, they sell them there. Or if you are a U.S. military veteran, you can actually apply for 50% off everything that they sell. So it's not just select items and everything. And they were actually attacked for that too. That was a political stand that they were attacked on. Was, oh, you give something back to veterans, then you're, then that's making a political statement. And then Coyote and Crow came out and, which was largely a failed RPG. And they went out and attacked them and saying, well, that's supporting colonialism and imperialism and that kind of thing. And are you going to make a colonialist RPG? And some of the responses to that were hilarious, because I was like, yeah, they should come out, with an RPG talking about, West African slave trade, or, take some of these other cultures that, had done the very same thing and do an RPG based on that. They wouldn't like that so much. But anyway, finally, Raven, let's get you in the mix.
So I'm Raven Wolfgar. I've been on YouTube for about almost 2 years now, primarily doing tarot and stuff like that. I also come in when I have the time and do videos on RPGs, just the stuff I like, and how you can get into D&D and everything but name virtually for pennies on the dollar. And when it comes to Castles and Crusades, I'm not gonna lie, I jumped on that $10 hardcover sale I jumped on it like a vulture, seeing a dead deer out in the middle of the desert. It was crazy. But from the original download of the free player's handbook that they give, that was my start. And when I looked at it, I was like, I've got to get into the system. This is exactly what I was looking for with like maybe a newer version of D&D. This I could get people into. This I could play. And I've posted pictures. They occupy an entire shelf in my cabinet, and I've got a box with their box sets, just kind of like under my coffee table here. Those games are, I would modify what RPG Pundit said. Not just all right, but a bit of all right. They were tops in my book. I loved it. But when that ridiculous argument came about making the RPG about the colonialism and the slave trade, I was like, have you guys read the Codex books? Because they're pretty historically accurate. They sum it up in about 140 pages. Are you certain you want that? Because it's not going to go the way you think at all. And for the rest of the arguments, my response is simply,
and for historical, based RPGs. I mean, we have the RPG Pundit here, and if you look at things like Sword and Caravan or Lion and Dragon, and I still have to get the Cults of Chaos. For some reason, I haven't gotten around to actually getting that, but I have Dark Albion, and I was really, really stoked about Sword and Caravan, because once he mentioned that, I was like, finally, I have something where I could start thinking about an El Barak kind of character, Robert E. Howard's El Barak character, and in that part of the world, and just about that time period, I was like, I'd love to just start looking into that kind of a expanding the historical fiction kind of or authentic or close to authentic RPGs out there. I think that that's something that really does need to be explored. And that's something that, like you mentioned, Raven, Troll Lord Games does. I mean, they're releasing all of these different codexes of they have Celtic, they have they just came out with one based on China, which I was waiting. I was waiting to see the firestorm that created, but it didn't. I was kind of shocked that it didn't. But anyway, I think someone was about to mention.
First of all, thank you for your kind words about Sword and Caravan. It's doing really, really well. It just hit gold bestseller.
Yeah.
And as far as Troll Lord, I've just never seen anything that would have made me jump to buy a product of theirs. But I haven't looked a lot, so it certainly could be that there is something. And I wasn't aware that, for example, they did this historical codec on China. I'd be interested to see that. So Troll Lord should probably send me a review copy. My reviews get thousands of views. It might be a good idea for them to do that. I'd certainly want to judge how historical they are, how good they are at it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that if they come around this and they'll say, but you can also get the player's handbook, the 7th printing of the player's handbook for free. So you could always check that out.
I know what CNC and it's just a clone game. That's the part that's boring to me, right? OSR games that are just clone games, including like Old School Essentials, all of those are boring. You need to reinvent D&D. That's the purpose of the OSR is constant innovation, And so when you make something that's too much like all the other ones, then I'm not all that excited to see it.
Well, the thing I'd like to point out, and I can't remember exactly which mechanic it was, but D&D 5th edition actually straight up ripped off a mechanic from CNC. And
which one?
I'm like, that's the thing. Like I said, I cannot remember exactly which one, but I know it's one of them.
Is it rolling with advantage, or I don't know if it's rolling with advantage. They got the advantage system from somewhere else.
Probably D&D 3, I think. I think that's what they were trying to improve on.
Look, I happen to have been there. Advantage and disadvantage are made part of the rules, right? And there was never any mention of CNC. There was a lot of talk about OSR inspiration in general, right? And one name that came up quite a lot, interestingly, was Dungeon Crawl Classics, even though not a lot of what's in 5e seems a lot like DCC, right? But it was like at certain points there was an attempt to catch that. And over the years, people have said, oh, but advantage was, and disadvantage were already in existence from this or that or whatever. Well, yeah, I mean, I can show you rules in old TSR games that say, well, with this magic item, you get to roll a saving throw twice and use the better result, right? That's essentially advantage and disadvantage. Yeah. But what was innovative about it for 5e was the idea that you got rid of all the pluses and minuses, all the bonuses and penalties, and just went with that, which was the thing that I really strongly advocated for. Because for a while they were like, well, we could use this for a couple of things, and then also still had modifiers. And I said, no, if you're going to use it for everything. And that's what'll change the game, because suddenly people who are like theater kids that can't even add or subtract will still be able to play D&D 5th edition.
Okay.
I wanted to comment real quick.
Go ahead.
Pundit, I own literally everything I've ever purchased from the time I was 14 on up. I've managed to hold on to every single game and book, etc., with a few exceptions, making dumb choices to sell things. Never sell your books, folks. You'll regret it. I'm not a big fan of any of this, rewriting of the original books, unless you really change it up and add something phenomenal to it. Because I got all the originals. Why do I need to drop $50 on a new book when I've been playing AD&D with thousands of people over the years? Because I've been playing 43 years now. You really got to tell me something like, I don't know, how about a setting over the mechanics? We're sorely in need of great new settings. Even Wizards of the Coast are like, no, we don't want you playing settings. We would just want you playing this one inside this one little box, and that's it. Everything else is
check out
danger of
and Sword and Caravan, because those are setting books that are system neutral, and they put a totally different spin on anything that TSR ever came out with, or Wizards for sure.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Arduin. I don't know if any of you guys know what that is.
Of course,
I'm helping them get the Emperor's Choice, get that back out on the market, doing different things in front of the scenes and behind the scenes. And if you want to talk about stealing, more things were stolen from Arduin. You ever heard of a crit or a fumble? Go look at 1978, 79 Arduin books. The first mention of crits and fumbles, and just about every game system that's come out since then is stolen, if not that, 10 other things from the great David A. Hargrave.
That's true, but I mean, of course, they took that out of wargaming, right? Because there were already like critical hits in some war games, right? I mean, everything has. There's a process of evolution in everything, right? And so there's obviously moments of great innovation in role-playing design, but the question is, are you just repeating the mechanic exactly as it was, or is there something novel about it that makes it in some way better or more or easier to use or something like that, And that's where you get the difference. But yeah, Arduin was the first one to think of the critical hit and the fumble, and of course that was something that later on became very popular in a lot of games. So they never really made it work in D&D, right? Even today, the D&D crits in 3 and 5e are kind of stupid.
I've always thought that the critical hit should be based on not what you rolled to hit, but when you go to roll your damage. If you roll max, doesn't that automatically say you kind of did something more akin to a crit than by what you rolled to hit, as in whether or not you hit? Anybody ever thought of that?
Well, my Lion and Dragon RPG, which is it's an OSR game, so it's based on D&D, but it makes a lot of changes because it's meant to be reflective of like medieval realism. You know, whether you want to say, was it Game of Thrones or something like that? You know, where it's a grittier type of thing, but also the culture is all put in there. I have a critical system there that I later expanded in the old school companion to different types of damage. And you basically roll a table for different degrees of anatomical severity of how much harm it does to you. And if you're a fighter, you add your level to the roll on the table. If not, you just roll, right? So it's one of the things that allows fighters to have a better niche advantage.
As I said.
Okay, if I can just jump in, let's. I want to get us back on to track here. Sorry about that. So let me go. Let me go with the quote. All right. So this is from Troll Lord Games, the 28th of December, and I'm just going to read it out. It's in two parts because I couldn't squeeze it all in the thing. So a quick note to remind everyone at Troll Lord Games that Troll Lord Games has a games-only philosophy. We leave all the discussions in which society enjoys to engage to others. They have no place here. This is a place to belly up to the table with our friends and enjoy games. So basically a games first kind of philosophy. And but I think that one of the things that many of the attackers to this message missed was a quick note to remind everyone at Troll Lord Games. All right. This was a tweet directed at their employees. All right. This was not a directive to consumers, to potential consumers, to people on the perimeter or gaming adjacent. It was just a reminder to their own employees that while they're carrying the Troll Lord tag in their bio line, that they're a representative of the company and do not do this. This is basically the warning that Jessica Price should have had. This is the warning that Froskurin of D4 TV should have had, and this is just a statement to their employees. And for them to get attacked for having a company policy for their employees, to me is kind of it's taking the statement out of context right from the get-go. And I'll let everybody, respond to that. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I would just point out that this has been the policy any place I've ever worked. Politics, religion, that kind of stuff. Look, you're here to work. We're paying you for your hours, and you've agreed to so much per hour. So just come in and work and leave that stuff outside. That's been the policy every place I've worked. However, I questioned them. I had missed this point, quick, that it was to the internal staff, but yet it was posted for everybody to consume. And normally you don't get that kind of communication. The company calls a company meeting and just to remind everybody, shut your mouth, just do your work. And it's usually an internal thing, but this ended up being external, and then it got spun and, as these things do.
A couple key things here. Going on what you just said. Back when I worked corrections, we had a policy. None of us as officers were allowed to post any kind of you've seen the yard signs around. People are voting for this candidate or that candidate. We weren't allowed to have those in our yard. And that's our property. We weren't allowed to have that. That was something I got. And I was like, I'm good with that. So every time someone came to my door, I was like, sorry, can't do it. And those who put those signs in my yard immediately watched as I went and ripped them out and threw them in the garbage. So That's something I get. That's something that, I mean, even to this day, when I'm, working just a couple blocks away, people will come at me with political statements left and right. And it doesn't matter whether I agree with them or not. All I can do is just, that's it. That's all I can do. I'm not going to take sides. I'm not going to push back. It's just not what I'm going to do. How this all started was Nerd Cognito posted a graphic of PAX Unplugged's COVID policy, and I do remember maybe about a month or so before I was approached by my friend Moose, and she was like, "Should we go?" And I'm like, personally, I just avoid conventions. There's nothing. I don't think that there's anything there they have to offer me personally. And I also know that these people will be there. I have to deal with them. I'm paid to deal with them at work. I'm not paid to deal with them on my time, and I'm not going to do it. So I'm like, nah, just nah. And then this COVID policy thing came up, and I'm watching Dungeons and Diversity. He posted a live play of the new Dragonlance Asterisk, and I'm watching this. Everyone in the audience is masked. No one on stage is. I'm like, okay, where was the policy for these guys? It wasn't there. That they get an exception. So
obviously, that whole rules for thee but not for me mentality. If you're a celebrity, you don't have to obey the rules because you're better than us plebes.
That's it.
I wanted to comment also, Raven. That makes complete perfect sense. I've worked a lot with law enforcement all my life, and the last thing you need is your employees putting a target on their back. They've already got one on their chest. Now you're going to put one on their back, saying, this is what I think and feel outside of my occupation. Come at me, bro. Because you're out there in droves, and it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. You're just putting a target on your chest, and they're just trying to not put targets on their employees' chests or backside. Yep. How is that anything other than just totally reasonable and responsible and sane? The old saying, we're not going to talk about religion or politics, and now you got to add music, and now you got to add games, and now you got to add culture and all this other crap. Can we just stick to religion and politics? Leave those off the table. We're all trying to have a nice meal here, kind of thing.
Yeah, and that was going to be my second point. As a matter of fact, these people got movies, comic books, TV shows, books. They came to the wrong neighborhood because maybe we can't do anything about movies. We can make all the little shorts that we want, but that costs a lot of money to do. That's a lot of time. We can write all the books that we want, but half of them are never going to make it to the shelves. We could do all these things, but they own the promotional machine there. When they came to tabletop RPGs, they forgot, and they missed a lesson. Self-publication has never been easier than it is today. If they had tried this shit in the 90s, they'd have won. But they came too late. They came to the wrong neighborhood, and now it's all you and me that do the promotion. They have the big promotional machine, sure, but what does it matter? It doesn't make any fucking money.
They also came after the ultimate problem solvers. We are the ultimate problem solvers. That is our hobby, is to solve problems. They gave us a problem. We're going to freaking solve it. You know what I mean, guys?
Yeah,
and gals?
First of all,
RPG
in the 90s, Gen Xer gamers wouldn't have put up with that bullshit, so they wouldn't have won back then.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, if they had the promotional apparatus, they probably would have, because there was no way for us to break in.
Well, that's not true. There were tons of gaming companies in the 90s. It was.
You just didn't have the internet, no internet for it. Let me ask.
The internet is what's allowed these people, these freaks, right? These people that in any time before the age of the internet would have been on the margins of society, the very margins, to suddenly pretend and give the appearance of being much more prominent and influential and powerful than they really are, and to intimidate other people into following their Stalinist agenda, right?
Yeah.
I never.
I love it when you say that.
I had two specific
When you say
questions that
that.
I wanted to direct. So one to Miguel, because Miguel, you have the journalist background. All right. So when you were working for whatever news agency you were working for, what kind of a policy did they have when you're putting things out there on the internet as a representative of their journalist, news network or whatever?
Well, I was working for a very old-fashioned newspaper, so the people who were our bosses, they didn't care about that. They just didn't care about that. We could basically, it was about 12 years ago, so things were a little bit different.
Yeah, they changed a lot, not just a little bit.
There's lots of changes since then. So right at this moment, probably they have certain guidelines for news for reporters and all that. But at the time I was working there, I don't think there was probably the celebrities. They might have some guidelines, TV celebrities, but a regular newspaperman didn't have to worry too much about that. Another thing that was different, and it should still be, is that Portuguese news, they never had that
Political inclination.
Yeah, no, not just that. English news and American news, they have a more, they give more leeway for a reporter to have an opinion. You can, not as it is right now, because I'm when I'm reading the news, I have a very big trouble understanding if it's news or opinion.
Yeah.
Right now, it's much worse, but and in Portugal, it's starting to get like that also, by influence, I think. From
and then I was gonna follow up with our RPG pundit. So back when you were working, as a consultant with Wizards of the Coast and everything, I mean, was there any at that time? So we're talking about like 2013, 14. The game was released in 15, so I'm assuming around that time frame. Was there any outside influence on, whether it be internet influence or whatever? Because I know, I mean, Twitter was around at that point. How much influence have you seen grow from Twitter on the gaming community, or the gaming industry, I should say?
Well, I can tell you that at Wizards of the Coast, at the time that they were designing 5e, you did not have people paying much attention to what bloggers or social media wonks were saying, unless they were gaming bloggers like me, in which case they would hire you, right? Or at least me. But you wouldn't have some rando on Tumblr being able to change an idea about what was going to be in the game. Now, what they did have obviously was this massive play testing, and they were much more interested in knowing what the play testers thought about the game. And a lot of changes happened in the different stages of the development of 5e based on the playtest feedback. Right now, there were some editions where, from what I understand, the playtesting was like just for show, but 5th edition was really seriously play tested, and it was, and that did have an effect on some of the decisions. But there was like, in terms of 5th edition was made not without any social agenda, but of course back then you could tell that Wizards had not yet been taken over by the wokest mind virus, right? Like they wanted to, they made some changes obviously to the kind of section on what gender your character can be, and stuff like that. But it was that wasn't because anybody pressured them. That was just because they were, Seattle liberals, basically, and it was, and when you read it today, I mean, obviously the evidence is that today you can see some wokists that point out that the 5th edition's player handbook section on gender is actually, bigoted and white supremacy or who knows what, like they now what back then they were saying was this radical innovation. Now they're saying it's evil, But I didn't have any kind of, I had an NDA and that I couldn't talk about things that were in the design process. I couldn't reveal stuff that was going on. But I didn't have any restriction on what I was allowed to say. My posts on Google Plus and my blog posts at the time kind of prove that,
Okay, and so now I'll move on to Tom. So Tom, you've actually been engaging with some of these, other YouTube channels, and certainly been involved with New TSR or whatever, and looking at all of their dumpster fire trials and tribulations and stuff like that. So, I mean, you've been very connected with Star Frontiers going back to, the Facebook group, Star Frontiers Alive and Well, and and all of the, just following along the industry from that aspect of seeing fan generated, content and keeping the old school alive, along that kind of a framework. And now, you're seeing some of the, and responding to some of those negative aspects that we're seeing basically coming out of Twitter and coming, out of individuals that have no business being in the RPG business. I think, so I just wanted some of your take on, this, incident in particular, but then some of the, because you have had some interaction with some of these negative influences.
Well, I started out, my path started out in high school, and the student counselor, guidance counselor, he had written this thing at the end of the year, his vision for each of us. And for me, it was to be an editor at Dragon Magazine, which I never got to do. But I began working on the fan magazines for Star Frontiers. So that was me in my 40s living my 12-year-old dream, the 13, 14-year-old dream. So I've been heavily involved in the fan magazines, and now kicking off yet a third fan magazine for Star Frontiers. And that led to the whole thing with New TSR doing, we're squatting on the trademark for Star Frontiers, and so I got recruited, but then I discovered I was being lied to, and then I said, hey, they're not doing Star Frontiers, they're doing D20 rules, and I got trolled for that with it was actually Thanksgiving, and I got trolled pictures of myself and my daughter who has special needs, got heavily trolled, and which pissed me off. And I had been thinking about the whole YouTube thing, and so I says, well, it's now it's game on, buddy. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I've been so involved, and I've so gone hard at New TSR. Is look, they pissed in my Wheaties, and therefore I'm going to go after them. And then he got the slap lawsuit on Eric Tenkar. So I was like, well, I've been wanting to just kind of back off on this, but it's like I have a responsibility to keep carrying the torch until he's out from under the lawsuit. But as for this incident with Troll Lord Games, I was completely ignorant of what what had evolved with Troll Lord Games. Mm-hmm. I've been kind of following David Simpson, Gamers on Games, because I'm buddies with Victor Dorso, who organizes DaveCon. And so, when I saw that, Dave's back and now he's picking on Troll Lord Games, it just irritated me. And I says, well, that's why I'm, so I did a video. I just, Victor pushed back at him with a threat of a lawsuit. He ponied up. I think it was. I think he told me it was $300 to pay a lawyer to put together the letters, which suggests that if he's willing to do that, he's willing to take you to court. So Dave ran and removed everything from the internet, but now he's back and now he's going after Troll Lord, and I think he's just an opportunist. So that's why I pushed. I kind of had not been cognizant of what was going on with Troll Lord, per se. I just hate bullies. I just hate, this whole, we're going to go after them looking for an opportunity, opportunity to pick on somebody. Look, if you really cared about somebody making a games only, no politics statement, if that really offended you, then you would, do the list of all the companies that are doing that. Go after everybody. To me, it just seems, so that was how I came at this, was I just got irritated at Dave Simpson.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, I mean, he's tried this before, and I've done a number of videos on, the attempts that the Twitter mob have made to go after the OSR. And, every time they do it, they find that there is no central head of the OSR. And that's what really perplexes them, is the fact that, if there was just one that they had to take down, they would have probably accomplished that goal already. But it's like it's like going after one head of the Hydra kind of, issue that they're dealing with, and, one that will keep on regenerating other heads. There's no one place for them to go at.
Cut off one head, two more sprout up, man.
Yeah, and it's just like, and they avoid certain individuals, attacking certain individuals, because they know that they'll have no influence there, or they'll get too much pushback, or the person is just too knowledgeable, of the industry, for that kind of a thing to work. I mean, RPG Pundit is one person that they tend not to go at, and I know you've said this on your own channel as well. They usually leave you alone because you can back up, with knowledge, what's not going to work for them. And then, they've gone after, so many different creators out there, whether it be Grim Jim or Venger or, the Red Room. They've gone after you pretty hardcore. When you were putting out, products that, it really kind of threw them off. Like, how do we attack them? And you don't put out anything that's truly objectionable, but they just don't like it because it's not their message, and I think that's something that I saw in this here, is that Troll Lord's message is not, anything that's controversial on its own. They just think that they can make some headway on it out of desperation, I think, because
any company should have this type of policy. So any company. So I've been working with customer service most of my life. You're not going to piss off your customer. If your customer has a stupid opinion or a wrong opinion, you're not going to go, "Oh no, I don't want your service. Go away." Well, at least you are not supposed to do that, right?
Yeah, unless you're Evil Hat and you tell people don't buy my product.
Yes, exactly.
Companies that they like to go after because they think that there's a vulnerability there, right? They smell blood in the water. Whenever someone says something that is this kind of moderate, because their statement is very moderate, actually, right? And it's just saying, well, we just want to make games that are fun for everyone, and we don't want to offend anyone and whatever, right? And they know that a lot of those companies that make that kind of statement, you can then bully them into turning it around. The crime that Troll Lord committed there was that one of their employees said something that was, an attack on gamers, an attack on, white males, and then, their argument is always that silence is violence, right? That if you aren't actively supporting the woke statement, then you are one of the enemy. And in a lot of cases, when companies say something like this, they then get brigaded by these wokeists, and the company will then fold, right? It'll suddenly turn around and say some kind of stupid statement that actually attacks their own customers, because a lot of these companies are run by people who aren't sufficiently aware of the real environment and their real customer base. And so they think, like, the argument has always been that, you know, there are all these people that are potential customers, that if you say woke things, you know, if you speak up for diversity or whatever, then those people will become a much bigger customer base for you than the people that you already have. And that's never true, right? It's anybody who's a gamer, you know, regardless of race, gender, or anything else, is going to be interested in gaming, right? And then this is the way they win over the big companies like Hasbro, right? Some wokest middle manager convinces these suits that know nothing about the hobby. They say, you know, that if you made products that were not just about dungeon crawling, but about, you know, representation and things like that, and you had, you know, adventures which aren't just about, like, you know, fighting evil or going into a dungeon, and were instead about, you know, working at a coffee shop in a magical university where you go to prom, then suddenly you're going to get thousands and thousands of people who don't like RPGs but will like that, and they'll be your customers. And so you can offend. You don't have to worry about offending your traditional gamers, because they'll stick around, right? And that's proven to be untrue in every respect, right? You lose your traditional customers, and you don't get anybody, because the people making those complaints hate RPGs, and they're never going to buy your products. So it's a shell game, you know.
Yeah, they always seem to get most triggered by the innocuous comment, you know. So when you say all are welcome at my table, they hate that. They absolutely hate that declaration. Everyone's welcome at my table as long as they're there to play the game. You know, if they come with some kind of an agenda that is outside of playing the game, then no, they're no longer welcome, or they either have to, you know, follow what everybody else is doing, or, you know, they're welcome to leave. And they hate that statement. It's very similar to the, you know, the all lives matter statement, and how that triggered, you know, that group. It's like, you know, there's nothing wrong with saying that. And what really throws them into a cognitive spiral, you know, a death spiral of it, is that when someone of color says the same thing, I mean, you know, Denzel Washington says it, they don't know what the hell to do. You know what I'm saying? Or, you know,
that's always been our mantra.
Yeah.
Every one of us here remembers back, you know, in middle school, high school, when we first got into the hobby, we were overjoyed at anybody coming to the table. You want to play? Yeah. Oh my God, come on down. Yeah. We don't care what you look like. We don't care what you do. You know, you could have been one of the jocks. You could have been one of the stoners. You could have been one of the preppies, or whatever. You know what I mean? We were just overjoyed. Black, white, whatever. Come on, you want to play and roll some math rocks? You are absolutely 100% welcome. There were so few of us that we were the most inclusive of gamers ever. We had everybody at our tables. You know, that's all that mattered was the hobby, was the love of this weird little new thing, that this Dungeons and Dragons or Traveler or whatever you were playing. It was so brand new. There were so few of us, and I wasn't one of the guys that got bullied. But, you know, a lot of my friends, they were the stereotypical, you know, bully targets. Come on, it's cool over here. You know, the water's fine. Come on. You know, let's play this game. You know, whether it was at the lunch table, the game hall, somebody's house, on a Friday or after school or something like that, and our parents didn't say, oh my gosh, you've got so-and-so kind of person coming over to our house. Is like, wow, there's actually people who really like to do this weird game where you sit around and talk all night. Okay, cool. They're not causing any problems. You've got girls at the table. You've got, all kinds of other, people. Our parents were overjoyed that we weren't the weird misfits that were playing this weird game. We were, bringing people in, and we weren't alone. And now that's all they're trying to do is really just divide us into these groups that they can control.
And just to make a little quote here, going back to a past point, these people are desperate for attention, and I think Tom McDonald summed it up in one of his raps when he said, "Dying for attention. That's why you start these little beefs." I bet you're so desperate to expect after this your sex tapes probably leak. I mean, I think a lot of them when they stepped into that. If you look at the comment section off of that one post that Troll Lord made, we outnumber them. They're getting dragged. They're getting BTFO'd. They can't stand it. There's still a few of them are still left, still waving their flags and screaming at us. And the best thing we could do is just, stand your ground and tell them, no, absolutely not. No, fuck no on toast. Miss me with this shit. Mm-hmm. And then they claim when you do that, you're bullying them. It's like, take your paranoid delusional psychosis somewhere else, please.
Yeah. You know what I find the most amusing about this whole topic is that it's predominantly these people that are having a problem are of a certain age and younger. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Yeah.
They're going to all have to grow up one of these days. And I forget who it was. It was a famous comedian who said, before I owned property, I was, to the left or whatever, but now that he owned property, he's a Nazi. He these people are going to have to grow up, and they're going to have their own families, their own businesses, etc. And the switch is just going to click, and they're going to be, oh crap, I need to keep my mouth shut and just do what I'm doing. Aim toward my goals and, just, mind my own business and do what I came here to do, not, stir up a bunch of crap, to get the smallest percentage of the population trying to, be the loudest part of the population to get this nonsense agenda fulfilled when when they grow up, they're going to realize, yeah, I was an idiot as a kid, as we all were. When we were young, we were pretty dumb, but yet we still made it through all that life had to throw at us, and here we are still enjoying this hobby that we love. And, it's kind of like the addition wars. Yep. Eventually they're going to find that the game that they loved, whether it was 4th, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th edition, there's going to be this 12th edition, and these young punks are going to be trying to, crap on them.
Yep.
Right. And they're going to be like, oh, now I know how you feel. Yeah, no shit.
That's all very good in theory, but in practical terms, the people that are the loudest proponents of this kind of ideology are rapidly aging millennials. They're people in their 30s. Who are essentially non-functioning adults. They're people that are never going to grow up. They're people that are they're people that are essentially incapable of doing anything with their lives other than this, which is why they cling to it so fanatically, right? It's like, I mean, you look at the people that are in Antifa, like half of them are sex offenders, and then the other half are basically welfare cases or trust cases, like it's these are people that in an earlier stage in our society would have been completely marginalized again, but because of the changes in our communications technology, suddenly they have a kind of voice that seems very large, but it's actually an illusion of proportion, that we haven't figured out yet, because the internet is still such a relatively new thing, and our society hasn't caught up to it yet, to where we can say, oh, we should just ignore these people.
Well, if Elon makes that brain chip and we all get Borg eyes, and we're all, connected, against our will, they'll find out that, oh crap, they're actually that minority, because everybody will be connected, God forbid. And that whole ability that they thought they had will just, get flushed down the drain.
Well, eventually what I see happening, and this is just, my predictions based on what has happened before, especially with Wizards of the Coast. I think what's going to happen is WotC's going to, lure in a lot of people with that walled garden of theirs, that D&D Beyond or 1D&D, whatever they want to call it. And little by little, they're going to start ejecting people for wrongthink. And the goalposts are going to shift. They're going to just constantly shift. There's nothing you can do or say today that will save you from tomorrow. It's coming. Eventually, they're going to have so few people that it won't justify the cost. They're going to have to increasingly monetize those people. And, stuff like Castles and Crusades, Basic Fantasy, Lion and Dragon, et cetera, they're going to see more people coming over to that, that's going to go away eventually. Now, it's not going to go away overnight, but I guarantee you it will.
That is one possible future. But the other possibility, when you look at this with what Hasbro has been doing recently, I pointed this out in a recent video. The people that they've now hired to be in charge of Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are not woke individuals. As much as they managed to infiltrate Wizards of the Coast, they never ended up managing to get one of their people in charge of Wizards of the Coast. And instead, now the people in charge of Wizards and Hasbro are both former Microsoft employees whose specialty is monetization of video games, like microtransactions and things like that. So I think that's symbolic of a turn in like they said, Dungeons and Dragons is under monetized, right? I don't think that the people really in charge now actually care about the woke agenda. And while it's possible that those people might end up infiltrating the control of moderation of the virtual tabletop for 1D&D, it's also very possible that they're just kind of doing a soft retreat from that, and that what you're going to see with 1D&D is that they're going to focus so much on the virtual tabletop and the video games, and they're just going to let the book writing die on the vine. Like they'll have the 3 main books probably for sale at Barnes and Noble or wherever, or Amazon, but they might just say, well, like these books are not selling that well anymore, so we're just going to stop making D&D books, and we're going to focus on adventure packages for the virtual tabletop. And the virtual tabletop is set up so that dungeon adventures, combat focused adventures are going to be the focus of it. So I suspect that some of these like vegan cookbook writers that have suddenly become D&D adventure designers with no talent and no experience are going to find themselves looking for a new job.
That's what we need, right? We need them just to get a new hobby or whatever and just disappear.
That would be a good thing.
Well, they can always learn to code, right?
Yeah. You used to get banned for Twitter for saying that. Yeah. You see, and that's the thing that's really changed. I think that the current Twitter mob hasn't quite grasped on yet is that even though they won't get banned for saying the things that they say, they're not going to get actively supported for it. They're not going to have opposition banned for pushing back on them. And that's what they're not used to, is the fact that, push back on them now. Nothing negative is going to happen for that pushback. Let's see. I saw a comment in here. So, and I was going to avoid saying this, but L puts up here. He says, then it proves that it's a TPRG, a tabletop role playing thing, since nobody mad rampant attacks on ArenaNet when Jessica Price went off the rep. Actually, well, she got fired, and then someone who supported her, her point was fired as well. They were fired because they attacked the fan base. I mean, it's the same thing with, Frosk or whatever her name is, when she went after, G4 TV's, consumers, basically say, their viewership was, if you don't like it, you can all screw yourselves and screw off. And they packed up and they left. It's like, all right, you just alienated the entire viewership. So to say that it's a TTRPG thing, problem, tabletop role playing has been the first industry, and the OSR part of that has been the first industry to give them pushback. They didn't get it when they destroyed the comic book industry. They didn't push back when they destroyed Star Wars and they destroyed Marvel, and they, DC was kind of dying on its own anyway, with a few rare exceptions. But I mean, television and now Disney cartoons are being destroyed. They're not getting pushed back anywhere except for in the TTRPG hobby.
There was a pushback, but the pushback was largely ineffectual because there was, the control was so centralized. In role-playing games, the control isn't as centralized, and therefore the pushback is more effective. Someone in the chat mentioned Twitter no longer has their back. The wolf is back, and that's very true. This Troll Lord thing is the first kind of major incident that has happened since Elon Musk liberated Twitter. And, if this had happened a few months back, there still would have been a ton of people that would have been fighting back against these people in the thread and elsewhere. But those people would all have been like shadow banned. Their comments would have been hidden. And now that doesn't happen anymore. And suddenly this is an example of why they're so hysterical about the fact that suddenly Twitter has an even playing field,
Yeah, they're getting desperate. Like, like I had mentioned earlier, that's why they're looking at these little, maybe that's the new chink in the armor that we can exploit, and I just look back at the comment and on Twitter, and the original comment has over 2,400 likes, and most of the attacks on that original comment now have been brought over to their own retweets. So they're not attacking the original statement anymore there, because they're either getting blocked from it, they're not seeing the interactions so they take it over to their own retweets, and that's where they have their little bubble where they can continue, and no one's following them to their retweeted comments to respond to them there. I know there was one individual on the thing, I forget his name, something archivist or something like that, took all of those tweets off of their retweets and posted those. Actually, I think RPG Pundit directed, you linked to that, or I followed directly to that. You mentioned him in your video as well. And
he posted their tweets, and then he posted their profile on Twitter.
Yes.
And if you look at the profiles, they all have the same thing, right? Like he, him, they, them, autistic, unemployed, or have some gaming company you've never heard of, it's all just so pathetic.
Yeah, award-winning RPG creator, and yet you've never heard of them.
All of them seem to be award winners or award nominators.
They all got participation awards, right? That's
you mean like how Susan Wojcicki gave herself an award a while back, for her work on YouTube?
Exactly. These are the people that grew up on Everybody Wins a Prize. So,
well, one of the things I wanted to point out, Michael Stronghold here said, honestly, I've retreated here because all other entertainment is so compromised. They can't do anything to my AD&D game. That's true. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, Michael, I'm kind of in the same boat because I was playing on Second Life for a long time. When I moved, I lost pretty much all my RPG stuff, so it's gone, unfortunately. And there was some TSR stuff in there too. So that after that, I was like, I looked for it on eBay. It was priced way out of my range, so I was like, oh, okay, I need to find something else. I went into Second Life. That was fun for a while. Then I was talking with some friends of mine, and I said, I remember tabletop role playing. You got around a table, and the jerks didn't last long. They were shown the door pretty quickly. Yeah. And I got back into it to find out the jerks had just about taken over. And I'm like, oh no. Oh no. And then of course finding the OSR and stuff like that, I was like, okay, this is where I want to be. This is the kind of stuff I really like. And I found it a little baffling to think that you could be a white supremacist for liking an old rule set. That just did not make sense to me at all.
Real quick, Raven, yeah. if you actually really want to get any of your old gaming material, this is a hint to all of you guys out there. February 15th starts the eBay buying season. From that moment to September 15th is when people trying to recover from this last holiday that we just went through will start selling off the stuff that they don't want or need to make some quick cash, and that's when the prices drop. I've been doing eBay for 20 years now, and this cycle is engraved in stone. If you want to buy stuff, old, hard to find things, don't try to buy them between September and February, because that's when people are selling them top dollar. February 15th through September 16th, when everybody's trying to go on vacations and things like that, go outdoors, and like I said, recover from this last holiday, that's when you buy your stuff.
That's really good to know, actually. Thank you.
My pleasure. This has been a service announcement from the Shadow and Sunstone.
Yeah. Yep. Good to know. Good to know.
So mark your calendar.
So let's see. So let's go back to Tom. Tom, anything else to add to the discussion on? Just where you see. So I don't know how much you're engaged on Twitter. So let's go with that.
I hate Twitter. I am on Twitter and I hate it. I stayed away from it for years. I was like, I don't get this Twitter thing. But my hypocrisy knows no bounds. I went on Twitter just so I could promote my videos for a few extra views. So Twitter's interesting. I think you get the most use out of it if you limit and just stick to, I'm following these people. I just found out, I was just in a meeting with my pastor and he's like, yeah, I'm on Twitter. And he was talking about who he's following and what he gets out of it. And I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting. Because, to me, Twitter's a little bit of a sewer. It's like, I got to walk through this tunnel to get out. And my feet are going to get a little dirty. But by and large, it's not too deep because I don't go down the tunnels where it's hip deep. So I'm not a fan of Twitter. It just can be so ugly sometimes. But, my hypocrisy knows no bounds. The
whole Shawshank Redemption scene comes to mind.
Yeah. Now Twitter Twitter does have a new feature, or at least it's new for me. I've never seen it before, where you can create your own circle, and you know how they have that graphic circle thing that you can go off site and it'll show you everybody in your circle. Well, this one is actually a little bit more selective. So it's more selective than just following others. It's you can actually add individuals to your circle, which virtually everybody here is in my individual circle now, where when you post things, I will see, it come up in that circle tab, rather than, so it's a little bit different than the Fire. It's a little bit, now I don't know if it's an extension of the $8 a month, because that's, to me, that was a great $8 a month investment, because I believe it allows, like, this is going to go directly to Twitter, as a direct feed. So they don't have to come out of Twitter to watch this video upload. All right. Or this live stream, I should say. This is going direct to Twitter live, without having to go to Facebook in order to watch it. So that, I believe, is one of the benefits of the, of the $8 a month kind of thing. So
I'm jealous because I'm in a country where you still can't get the Twitter Blue. So,
yeah,
Twitter is absolutely my favorite MMORPG.
Yes, hey, it certainly is, because you don't know what dungeon you're going to walk into, and sometimes it could be the Tomb of Horrors, and other times it could be Dungeon Land, very very far, or kind of weird. Other times it could be the Black Pyramid of Chalt, and or it could be Swords and Caravan, or Star Frontiers Dumpster Fire, or a Star Frontiers the real thing when you're seeing back in its glory days. So or it could be the Red Room, and any of their too hard to keep track of variations of
any of their 30 books.
Any of their 30 books, that just seems to have no end. Well, I know that Miguel and Sylvia had a 5-year backlog of material just waiting to spring upon the drive-through and other places as well. So but I think that's the other thing that really does miff the Twitter mob that wants to attack the OSR, is that there is just so much content coming out of OSR and independent publishers, and it really throws them for a loop when there are creators out there that that can sustain themselves on their own sales as well. And I know even Wizards of the Coast is starting to recognize that there are creators. I think they said something like there are 20 creators out there that are in that category of the 750,000 plus range, that they want to monetize, but it's like, they're independent of you. But I think that the realization is that the tabletop role-playing hobby is not just Wizards of the Coast. It's not just Chaosium. It's not just Paizo. And I don't know, Chaosium or Paizo, which one is bigger? Probably Chaosium is bigger than Paizo. It's not just Games Workshop, but it is 1,000 different creators. And yeah, some of them are so small and no one will ever come across their stuff unless it's by sheer chance, but it's not something that the Twitter mob can control, and I think that's why they're lashing out at it's not a tiny company, but it's certainly not a big company either, and they thought they were going to find weakness there, and I don't think that they anticipated the 2,400 plus responses, most of them positive towards Troll Lord games. I don't think that they expected the YouTube community of OSR creators on YouTube coming out and saying, no, this is this is not a kind of statement that deserves being attacked. It's a very common sense, business centric, statement to be made, and it wasn't even directed at consumers. It was directed at their own employees. Now, I know one of you said, or certainly a comment was said, that if this was done privately within their own company, I don't know what made them make the decision to put it out there on Twitter. But the point is that they wanted to stop the Twitter commentary that was potentially going to be negative for their company, and so they put it out on Twitter. Yeah. But the statement in itself, if we start buying into that nonsense, and it is sheer nonsense of, silence is violence, or, it's not enough just to be against racism. You have to be anti-racism, whatever the frick that is supposed to mean. I came out of the New York City public schools, and they were trying to push some of these concepts, a few years back. And even then we were sitting there, we were like, this is not anything that's going to advance, anyone's well-being. It was just a nonsense way of looking at things. And, getting in, like trying to interject that into gaming, that kind of political philosophy into gaming is just not the place for it. It's not what, most people, they might have 2 or 3 hours a week to spend gaming, maybe some a little bit more than that, but we're coming to gaming to escape all of that kind of nonsense, and not, to now further interject it into our gaming. It's just not the place for it, not where most of us, thankfully, not where most of us are when it comes to gaming.
Well, the thing about the gaming table is that most of my gaming I have to do online through StreamYard. Mm-hmm. So it's gamers spread throughout the U.S. And if I have the opportunity to have it around the kitchen table, look, I'm not going to find a bunch of politically the same, religiously the same white males like myself to populate my table. It's going to be much more democratic. It's going to be much more diverse. And so I'm just interested in gaming. I don't need the political stuff here at the table. So I don't care, what it is that you bring to the table. Can we sit down and game and leave that other stuff out? And that's what I care about. It's about the only person who would be barred from my table is if I had somebody at the table who I happen to know has an issue, whether it was that, maybe they were, maybe they had sexual violence or molestation against them in the past, and somebody was a sex offender. I would not, out of respect to that other person, I would not let the sex offender show up at the table. Or if I had people who were recovering, from a drug issue or alcoholism, I wouldn't let somebody coming in saying, "Hey, I'm gonna have a beer here." You can't do that at my table. We have to, we just have to be respectful. Mm-hmm. And so there are people that I would bar, but it's out of concern for others is where that's rooted.
Look, in the thread of Troll Lord games, the most common type of wokest statement was something along the lines of, by making a statement like Troll Lord did, they're oppressing marginalized gamers. And let's break that down for a second. If what they're saying is, if Troll Lord doesn't defend their employee, who I believe is white, for attacking white male gamers, that's somehow oppressing marginalized gamers, you know? And so, like, my reply to that is, you know, you are the only oppressors here, you know, like this is the absolute nonsense of what they're promoting. It's got nothing to do with marginalized people. It has everything to do with their own desire for control.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And not everything has to be political.
The higher they
That's the other thing they don't get.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's see. That was Raven. You were saying not everything has to be political.
Yeah, not everything has to have any kind of political leaning one way or the other. That's what they don't get. I mean, in any game, you can have political intrigue, something that will affect the characters. That creates drama and drives the story forward. It also creates challenges for players who are, like you said, problem solvers. But not everything has to have whatever's been in CNN and MSNPC and whatever else thrown into the game itself. That, you know, I think one of the things that came up what was it, a few months ago, Chaosium's fans were going absolutely stark raving nuts because there were people, rightfully so, reasonably objecting to the pronouns on a character sheet, because that kind of thing reasonably did not exist back in the 1920s and 30s. So coming from a historical, you know, point of view, they were attacking them, calling them Nazis, going with the standard fare here. And this is the kind of thing that I talked about in one video. I was like, well, we've got a few solutions to this problem. We could play something else. Four Against the Great Old Ones comes to mind. It's a very small book. It's inexpensive. Play that. Amazing Adventures was one I did bring up because that focuses on pulp era stuff. You can create your own Call of Cthulhu game. Savage Worlds, same thing. I mean, that's a go anywhere, do anything kind of book. Genesis, that'll help you build one from scratch. If you have the dice or the dice roller app, and or you can just take a sheet of paper, make your character sheet, reject the official character sheet, and go, here's my character sheet. You know, there's literally nothing you can really do about it. I'm not going to include that on there. Or you could just, you know, take a nice big fat Sharpie and cross that out. There are any number of things that we can do, and they're all problem solving. But especially if you're playing with a GM who insists on you doing that, there's another option. Get up from the table, leave, go form your own table. That's what we do. And that's one of the things we suggested during the Troll Lord thing was go play something else. Form your own table, get the books, make it your own. And it was like this, that kind of thing does not register to them. They have to have an official company stance and it must be enforced. And it's like, well, you're not getting that here. It's very simple.
I had a business partner that he was Sicilian, and I was trying to ask him about that whole rule about drinking red wine with red meat and white wine with white meat. And his response, I have found, applies to pretty much everything in life. And he said, drink what the hell you like.
Yeah.
Well,
okay. Attitude, even if dying online. Yep. I noticed one of the comments up here was logic that exists to people who are trying to reenact the Tom Hanks from Mazes and Monsters. Yeah, that's something that I've seen, recently, among several commentators on YouTube as well. This whole idea that they're going to so fully immerse themselves into Dungeons and Dragons as a as like a life model, that they're going to model their lives after, this, or represent their lives in this form and everything. I was like, geez, that's exactly what the satanic panic was warning us about. It was like, that this game is going to take over your whole outlook on life and your identity and your this and that. And I was like, it's like they're.
But they don't have a life or an identity, so
yeah,
it's
like, geez, this is what the whole thing was supposedly warning us about. And back then, we were like, no, it's just a freaking game. It's like none of us are taking it to that extreme.
Tell that to all the football fans.
Yeah,
and there are a few out there that are just stopping short of like actually threatening violence. And the thing I love to put this out there because it's true. Some of us have faced actual violence. Mm-hmm. The difference between then and now is some of us aren't running. Mm. And I think it would be a good idea for them to keep that in mind. And I probably made an activist cry and whatever.
Yeah.
Part of the kind of Tom Hanksification of things, I guess you could say, is that they try to argue that what you present in an RPG is somehow going to be it's going to have an effect on a person's real life ideas or real life psyche, right? So one example of that is a lot of these ridiculous safety tools that they create are based on the theory that if someone has a giant spider in a game, then that's going to traumatize people that are afraid of spiders or something like that, which seems pretty ridiculously nonsensical to me. And to bring it back to the Troll Lord thing, another one of the comments that I saw on that thread was along the lines of, well, if your RPG setting has like absolute monarchs and peasants, then you're making a political game. Mm-hmm. Well, no, you're not. There's a complete difference between doing something that has historical verisimilitude versus doing something that is meant to be an inherent political indoctrination message in your game, right? Like those are two very, very different things. But this is why, for example, in Wizards of the Coast, and in a lot of the RPGs that are made by, well, a lot of the indie woke RPGs are outright, propaganda for socialism or whatever. Like, it's Marxism in space or something like that. But in Wizards of the Coast, they've gradually altered every single D&D setting to have the social values and the attitudes and even the language and behaviors of 2022 Seattle. Like Waterdeep has pride parades and stuff like that. It's just so nonsensical because their idea is that if you create a setting that doesn't reflect their values, then you are inherently engaging in an act of political violence.
Yes.
Are we not allowed to not give a shit about things anymore?
No.
Do we have to actually care about everything?
Yeah. No, you're not.
Sorry,
I'm may not be allowed, but it's not like we're asking permission.
Yeah, that silence is violence. So as soon as you say, "Well, I'm not," this isn't on my radar. That's privilege. You have the privilege of not giving a shit. And that's that is one of almost identical to one of the attacks that they made was that only your white privilege allows you to not give a shit. All right. And so
wow, I've had this my whole life. Yes. Wow.
I really wish I knew.
It's it literally is something that they've said. Now I've known people of all races, colors, creeds, whatever, who didn't give a shit. I guess they didn't realize that they too had white privilege because as a commenter already said, you don't even have to be white to be a white supremacist anymore. I mean, that's the other thing that's just a phenomenal interpretation. I mean,
Just ask Larry Elder, right?
Yeah. Larry Elder, Justice Thomas,
Candace
you
Owens.
name it. Candace Owens. All these people just didn't realize that they had this privilege. It's just insanity. It really is, and it's just they're grasping at straws to find something that will stick, that they can
Maybe
drive
they're
that
actually
wedge and get in.
losing their little war.
Yeah, no, they're desperate because they are losing the argument. The pendulum is shifting to the other side now, and that's what they see. So they're going to try to get what wins they possibly can, and and they're losing. They're consistently losing in our hobby. They're losing. They're not getting the same gains that they got. They weren't able to destroy it like they did the comic book industry, and I think if I'm not mistaken, that was the first industry that they destroyed. I mean, they literally destroyed it. It's like the comics are 1/10 of what they used to be, and you look at the most popular comic books that used to sell, 100,000, 100,000 copies of an issue, and then it rapidly came down to 50, or what was that, like Superman sells like under 10,000 copies. That's insane compared to what it used to be. I mean, they've destroyed it.
Exactly.
Print newspapers are virtually gone. Actually, a lot of legacy media is virtually gone now. They're going bankrupt because and that's a good thing. And they don't see that what they're driving. I mean, the get woke, go broke doesn't happen like overnight in most cases, but it does have a lifespan of probably less than a decade before these companies start to realize that, hey, we've been following the wrong path here, and we've been alienating too many of our steadfast consumers, and we put all our eggs into this basket, and this basket wasn't buying our eggs, and never had been, So I look at the benchmark that I think it's going to come in 2023 is the D&D movie. If that flops, you're going to see a bloodbath at WotC. On the creative side, you're going to see a bloodbath at WotC because
they're making another D&D movie. Imagine wow, I guess that's one more movie I won't see this year.
It's D&D. It's D&D in name only, because they said that they had to. They included Easter eggs to remind you that it's a D&D movie. It was like, no, if it's a D&D movie, it doesn't need Easter eggs to remind you it's a D&D movie. It's obviously not a D&D movie. Then if they have to give you Easter eggs, so I think that it's going to really be a turning point, and then they're not, these Twitter, the Twitter trolls are not even going to have Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro to be their support, pushing them forward, because those former Microsoft executives are going to put the kibosh on that real fast.
And on top of that, I think one of the things that we're kind of missing here is that the entire point of their movement is demoralization. What they want feeling alone and scared. Mm-hmm. And when they stepped into this arena, they found a whole lot of people, especially when they went against Troll Lord Games. They found a whole bunch of people who were like, "We're not alone. We're not scared, and it's really evident you are. You're in the wrong neighborhood. Back out while you can."
Bloodworth, all of your examples of
step away from the keyboard.
All of your examples were of black white supremacists, but when you look at Latinos, right? They accuse Latinos of being white supremacists so much that they started to vote Republican in the millions.
Yeah, it's
like, hey, cool story, bro.
yeah, yeah, it's
It's true. Married to a Latina, excuse me. Yeah, they're going to regret a whole lot of dumb things they've been saying over the past, I don't know, forever.
Well, I saw that once they started getting the pushback on, which was almost immediate, the Latinx got pushed back right away. Once they started trying to use that, anyone who is, Latina by background was like, hell no, we're not accepting that.
We all hate that. We despise that.
Despise that. I mean, it's the
rightly so.
Particularly, anyone whose language is gendered, push back on that right away. So whether it's Italians or Spanish or Portuguese, I'm assuming as well. I mean, they're like, no, you're freaking appropriating our culture. You're erasing our culture, and this is not something that we bought into. And so, like the RPG pundit just said, I mean, look at the gains that politically have been made, like in Florida or other places, with the Latin community just pushing back, and even immigrant community pushing back on some of this stuff as well. I mean, it's not just the people who are raised here, born here, or whatever, or been here for decades. It's the people who have just come over, pushing back on these ideas as well. The pendulum has shifted, and that's what they haven't picked up on yet. And I think that as 2023 continues rolling forward now, I mean, we're only on day 2, and this was I think the last gasp of Twitter trolls on Twitter in 2022. I think that this is their last gasp of trying to influence the OSR. And
I wouldn't hold my breath on that.
Well, we can do a lot by pushing back on it, and that was something, that I, was thinking about, is like, how else can we respond? So I know I've always had a policy of, like, I've always ridiculed people who I've never interacted with, but have me blocked. And I was like, I've never, I don't even know who the hell this person is, and I've actually had someone send me recently a private message on Twitter, and they said, listen, I just thought you should know this. He says, like, you and I, we don't agree politically on very, very much, but you should look at this and see what this person is saying. And the person was basically reaching out like, hey, look at this Bluddworth guy. He's gaining some traction, here on, YouTube and Twitter and such. And we have a lot of mutuals, and we need to get out to these mutuals and tell them to start blocking this guy, and I used to be like, what a pathetic thing. It's like just such a sign of weakness. However, with this new thread, and I'm looking at it and I'm saying, when you go into a thread and you see that all of these people have blocked me, like you actually see this is a protected tweet, right? And you go down it. I want them to see the same thing when they come into an OSR centric thread. When they come in here and they say, well, wait a second, there's nothing for me to feed off of. There's nothing for me to copy from because I'm blocked, from 50 of these responses out of 75 responses. That's what I want them to start to experience themselves. When they come into something and they say, oh, wait, I'm the one that's blocked. Almost like that movie quote, like, wait, we're the bad guys? It was like, wait, we're the ones that are blocked? That's what I want. I mean, RPG Pundit put out something, I think, on Twitter the other day, yesterday, or maybe it was even this morning. Call them Stalinists. They hate being called Stalinists, right? You know, I'll let you expand on that. Why they hate being called the Stalinist.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've seen some people say, well, you guys are the real fascists or something like that because they call everyone fascist. But that doesn't, you know, they can just kind of shrug that off, right? And you know, calling them Stalinists, it's because it's, first of all, it's true, right? Every single one of these people, they don't like Stalin as a person, right? Like they recognize that it's really bad press for them to be associated with Stalin. But if they had the same power that Stalin had, they would do exactly the same things, right? That's these guys are people that would build gulags. They just can't, right? So and you know, some people say, oh well, they're more like Maoists. Yeah, okay, yeah, sure, the Cultural Revolution and all of that, right? But a lot of them kind of still stand for Mao, right? Like they still claim that he was somehow, you know, he doesn't seem like as bad a guy, even though he killed, you know, tens of millions of people. But you know, nobody can excuse Stalin. There's hardly anyone out there saying Stalin was a good guy, right? So you call them Stalinists, and that's what pisses them off more than anything, you know. And they go, "Oh, I'm not a Stalinist. I'm a left anarchist, right?" Fuck you, right? You would, if you had the power he had, you would totally be murdering people, you know.
Or socialist libertarian.
Yeah.
Yeah, call them National Socialists. They hate that. Yeah, National Socialists. They hate that.
Now I'm going to steal that.
Yeah. But yeah. I mean, that's something that I'm hoping that we start to do more often, is that when they come in with these, you know, these crazy things, you know, to push back by saying, you know, no, you're wrong. This is why you're wrong. And this is, you know, this is just a, you know, simply a, you know, an attack, and I'm blocking you, and let it sit there for a while so that they maybe see it and then block them. All right. That way they can no longer feed off of it. And my hope is that when they do come into these threads, they see nothing but, you know, this tweet is protected, and go right down, and they have nothing to feed off of. And then they'll start to realize that, hey, wait a second, I have excluded myself from, you know, from these conversations. It's what I was doing that got me barred from this, you know. And the other thing I noticed was that when I see somebody like that, and I didn't realize this fully, if someone bans you, you can still go to their account and ban them back. All right, because they can always undo that ban, see what you're doing, do a cut and paste, and, you know, re-quote you, and then shut it back down again so you can't respond. So when I see that I'm banned from somebody that I've never had contact with, I make sure to counter ban. All right. That way they can't pull that trick with me, because I picked that up looking at how they were operating on the Troll Lords original thread by retweeting. And that's where they're making a lot of their attacks, is some place where you might not think to follow them to, and to see where they're getting all of their support, because they believe that they're in their safe space there, where they can make that comment and not have any pushback on it whatsoever. So if you start banning them back, they won't be able to do that, you know, in the future. And like I said, hopefully they start to realize that the OSR space is a space that they can't even respond to or react to.
Now, you make this point, and my attitude has always been that I don't need to block or ban anybody, you know, unless they're just really absolutely way out there. Mm-hmm. And so I haven't. But just recently, the father of a CEO of a supposed gaming company, after I did a video, you know, came on the Facebook group, and you know, he had blocked me in the past, but he unblocked me so that he could then engage. And when it didn't go well for him, he then blocked me again.
Right.
And on top of that, but the part of the problem is I happen to be admin in that group, so I still see what you're saying. But then he went on to dox somebody in a very threatening manner, such that a lot of people were up in arms over it, including the victim of the doxing. And so I'm like, you have me rethinking that idea about counter banning him and counter blocking him. It just goes against the grain for me. I don't know what other people here think about that. What DM Bluddworth has said.
Yeah, I agree with that. I tended not to block people, but now I'm starting to think back about it. Yeah, because if they can block you and then exactly still share your tweets or your posts in their safety space, their bubble.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't something that I ever considered because I always looked at it as, that's just such a weak play. However, they're just utilizing the fact that we're not playing the same game, and they're using it to attack, any of our, because they'll do exactly what Tom just said. They will unblock you, take a snippet, and reblock you again, and then utilize that against you someplace else. Where you don't realize that it's festering someplace else now. So I think it's really important, and like I said, there has got to be some kind of a system shock to them when they step into a thread looking to attack because they see that original thing, and they're going to jump into the comments, and all of a sudden they see, wow, there's 70 comments in here, and I can only read like 10 of them. And there's nothing for them to feed off of. They're going to start to feel that, hey, I'm losing ground here. I have no place to fight from.
There's two types of people I block on Twitter. One is if there's some of these leftist posters that do exactly what Bluddworth described, where they have you blocked already, and then they're like quote tweeting stuff knowing that you can't respond. I will block those if I'm aware of them. And then the other ones are, there's a lot of times in my Twitter anyway, you get posts, attack posts from these leftist accounts that have 50 or less followers that are, they're very obviously sock puppets for other, accounts that they want to be able to go in there and attack what I'm saying without revealing who they are. And so I'll block those too, because they're just, ridiculous.
That's kind of like that RPG New Jersey guy, right? Tom will know who I'm talking about, right?
Oh, I know who you're talking about. And the fact of the matter is he can say he owns a hell of a lot of TLG stuff. The difference is I can prove it. I can prove what I own. So I'd love to see him step up, but I really don't care. That's what my New Year's resolution is, people. I'm going to do it wrong. I don't care. Here comes the pain.
And that's all right.
Yeah, I think that's one of our strengths is that we aren't centralized. If we did something like that, it wouldn't end well.
Yeah, no, I'd rather just take back and move to the center Twitter. I'd rather fight them on their battlefield and basically say this space is not denied to you, but this space is not a space where you're going to go unchecked and unpushed back on and unchallenged either. And,
you're now fighting a war of attrition.
Yeah, it's it's not a place where you're going to have a free ride anymore. And you can see their desperation because they don't have Twitter's backing anymore.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Well, that's also the thing about people who don't really create. They don't feel good unless they're tearing something down.
Mm-hmm.
That's what unscientific survey here. Just what I've noticed is if they're not really creating anything, they tend to just not be happy unless they're tearing something else down. And that somebody who's busy creating stuff, they really don't have the time, for tearing stuff down. And I don't mean like in RPG Pundit's case where he does do a video and he's doing pushback. He's not really trying to destroy them and get them silenced. He's just pushing back, saying, "Hey, you're being dumb," and he's calling an apple and a tomato, and so that's not what I mean. But it's like the gamers on games just wanting to cancel, a con or cancel a con organizer or cancel troll or games. It's just they're not happy unless they're putting a notch in their belt, and that's what it seems like to me. And
yeah.
Well, it was why are you excluding us? We let them get included, and it's why are you constantly against us when we're trying to better your game? We let them better the game. Then they pushed us out. They're saying, you're old and you don't belong here.
Mm-hmm.
So they pushed us out. Well, if you don't like this, go form your own thing. Form our own thing. And it's why are you excluding us? The cycle just repeats and repeats and repeats until they get. And I think that's what they want. They want every one of these companies to bend the knee to them. And when they found the one that wouldn't, and they found supporters weren't going to back that play, that scared the hell out of them, and it still scares the hell out of them. It's been scaring the hell out of them from day one. I mean, look at Monkey's Paw games, I think they're called. And I don't know how many people are employed with that, but I've only had interactions with one person. And what I saw before I had the interactions was something like, I want nothing to do with you because you're scum. You suck.
Well, yeah, not all are as blatant as Evil Hat was when they came out and they said, "Don't buy my games. Don't buy. If you voted this way, don't buy my games. If you're this, don't buy my games. If you're, and I'm sure that a lot of people were like, okay, I will never argue with anyone when they tell me not to buy their product.
And then they will say, why aren't you buying my game? You're a Nazi.
Yeah. Why aren't you
buying my games? I mean, that's what Coyote and Crow did. That's what Sword Streams did. When they came out with their African-centric RPG, and they were like, "Oh, people didn't buy it because they're racist." It's like, no, you told us not to buy it. We've seen that with We've seen that with Hollywood movies. Black Panther 2. They said, certain people should not watch this the first week. It was like, I don't need to watch it for the first year. I don't need to watch it at all. I don't need to watch it at all. It's like, I'll give you all the room you need, and never see it, never buy it. It's just they don't understand the what they're doing when they say this kind of thing. When I looked at the Troll Lord things, I've seen so many people that were, I'm the creator of this. Then why the hell would you have in your bio line, you're creating this, and you're basically telling people, don't buy my stuff? It's like you're either a business or you're a private individual. If you're a private individual, then you can say whatever you want. But once you put that business tag on there, you have to think that you're a business. This is
at least those guys are honest about what they then later they complain about paying the price for that honesty. But the people that piss me off are the ones that try to hide the nature of what their game is. So like they're they try to present their game as, this is exciting dungeon adventures or whatever, and then you open it, it's all social justice garbage, right? And so they're essentially trying to trick people into buying their products. So I kind of prefer when the wokeists are really honest about what they're doing up front, Wizards of the Coast is very guilty of this in that, you know, when they're on Twitter, they talk all about how, you know, the latest game is full of, you know, multicultural representation and LGBT characters and all of this stuff, and the game, you know, it breaks the book, whatever, breaks the traditional D&D concepts, where if you're like, you know, the characters will be punished if they try to solve the problems by violence and stuff like that. But then the book, if you look at the book when it's in the bookstore, right, like the front cover looks like some kind of exciting action adventure thing, and then the back blurb talks about it like, oh, it's got, you know, 27 adventures full of, you know, extra planar heroism and so like they try to sell it as though it's a normal D&D product, so that the people that are buying it at the bookstores, who are the people that aren't on Twitter, are essentially tricked into buying a product that's complete garbage. But they you know, because they think it's going to be like other D&D books they bought in the past.
Yeah, I think the best indication of that is how quickly they stopped talking about their own products. I mean, well, once they released, I think it was the Citadel one. I always forget the name of that thing. The
Radiant Citadel.
Radiant Citadel. Radiant Citadel was out for less than a month, and they never mentioned it after that. Just disappeared. You know, from their, they started talking about the next book coming out. You know,
well, because it was a dumpster fire.
Yeah, it was like, you know, that was a dumpster fire, then followed by the next one and the next one, and they always just stop talking about it as soon as it comes out. That tells me that they're not confident in their product, and because they're looking to go to the next thing, and it's the, you know, we're only just trying to produce enough product out there to keep the D&D, you know, trademark out there. You know, we're not looking to actually produce quality. We're just looking to produce name recognition, and that's what they're really focusing on. When 5e first came out, I mean, they were concerned about the quality of the game system because they were trying to recover from 4e. And they were trying to make something that would make amends and say, oh no, we're going back to some of the traditions that made this game a game that's been around for 30 years, you know, and you know, we're going to try to amend from that. But that whole concept became message before game now, and that's how they see their own product, as that the message is more important. Some of those gaming companies, you know, like Evil Hat, like RPG Pundit said, they're at least honest about it. They care, you know, no, we're pushing a message, you know, and we don't care if, you know, people are, you know, we're actually telling people not to buy it, you know, that don't agree with the message, because we're making this as a, what do you call it? That's a boutique, you know, this is a boutique sale, you know, that we're doing here. We don't mind, you know, a very small populace of, you know, and you have that on both ends of the spectrum too. I mean,
well, this is the shift that's been going on in media. You get like a reboot of a Star Trek franchise, and people start criticizing it, questioning it, you know, and they're like, "Oh, you're just a bunch of haters."
Yeah.
You know, or if it's a Star Wars franchise, oh, just a bunch of haters. And you know, look, if you want to alienate the old fans, fine. But that's the shift that they're going in, is that we have no obligation to the previous fans of this franchise. We're going to do with it what we want, and we just don't care. And so this is kind of a shift that you've seen. You know, when 5e first came out, that really wasn't something that evolved yet. So they were concerned with the former fans. You know, but I think now they're probably jumping on that bandwagon of, well, the OSR is just a bunch of haters. And I think that's what
toxic fan trope.
Yeah.
We are all toxic.
Yes, that word. So
which is really not even accurate. That's why we're in this hobby is for the love of the game, and that's something that is completely lost on them.
And partly you criticize because you love that product so much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
squeaky wheel gets the grease.
You know, I'm critical of my children. Why? Because I care about them.
Yeah.
You know, and so being critical of them does not show that I hate them or that I'm a hater or that I'm toxic. I mean, I could be, but it's because I do care about my children, and I care about that property. I care as a fan. But if you're going to alienate me, fine, I'll go someplace else.
Well, I think that, you know, what some people like along the lines of what Tom is saying is that, you know, WotC is not Dungeons and Dragons. You know, they think that they might, you know, that they are, but they're not. Dungeons and Dragons will continue long after WotC no longer owns it. And really, they don't own it. Hasbro owns it. And Hasbro has taken the reins away from WotC. You know, so there, you know, it will continue on long after WotC no longer, you know, owns it. And just as it continued on when TSR no longer owned it, you know, and, you know, it will still, you know, move along because the concept of it is still, you know, it's still a concept that people want to play. People still want to play high fantasy role-playing games. You know, that's not going to change. You know, whether they call it D&D or not really makes very little difference. The you know, this whole idea, it's going to become a life brand like Harley Davidson. Seriously, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard. All right, you know, and I've always said it. I was like,
wow.
If I am not wearing a D&D shirt, I will not see anyone in the most crowded mall in New York City wearing a D&D shirt. All right. I could walk into a game shop that sells role-playing games. No one in there is wearing a D&D shirt. It's like, but I could walk into the same mall and I will see 15 people that I know damn well do not own Harley Davidsons. All right. But they're wearing a Harley Davidson t-shirt. You know what I'm saying? Because it is a image that transcends motorcycles. You know, it has so many other things. Like a D&D's image doesn't transcend anything but nerd culture.
That's it.
And a very select form of nerd culture that, regardless of Critical Role's popularity, 99% of the people don't say, "Hey, that's cool." You know what I'm saying? It's like there just doesn't have that same cultural impact and crossover appeal.
Well, going back to what we've been talking about Troll Lord, where they just want games only. Of course, I got into Vampire the Masquerade before that Rod Ferrell vampire cult thing blew up. And if I was already in trouble for playing D&D, I was really in trouble for playing that one. And I never once did any kind of real politicized topic ever come up in my games. Everything was dealt with pretty well. I've had some great experiences playing it. And then we get this new edition. And I'll send the tweet because I managed to pop a little graphic of it into the tweet, and holy shit, did they come out of the woodwork for that one? But here's the thing: as many responses as I got calling me this, that, and the third, there were a couple hundred people that agreed with me, and they come from all walks of life. And that's when I sat back and I was like, "Yep, they're losing." That's why this, you know, Troll Lord Games' statement is nothing new. This is how they've always operated. This is just a reminder to the employees. This is how we operate. Then this shows that this will show you they know they're outnumbered. They know their demoralization has no power. They stepped into a place where all their power is just poofed away, and they're pretending like it rates, and it doesn't. And it's absolutely amazing. They managed to win over a few companies, yeah, but those companies are going to end up, booting them when they find out, hey, we're going to go under with it. This is not sustainable, and it can't last. If you really want to know, ask Mophidius. They tried that with Mutant Chronicles, and they're canceling it for how many times have they tried to put that one out there? Like twice now. This is like the second time they've canceled it and clearanced out all the books, and I grabbed them. But I've got books.
I missed out on that. It's one of my favorite IPs of all time.
Yeah,
Conan.
I also love Conan.
Well, they didn't lost it. They just
yeah. You can still get them in PDF through drive-through for like I think $6. You can get the whole collection. But I've got books by gaming companies that I found out about their bad behavior after I bought the books, and I'm like, okay, I'll never buy another book again. I'll never buy from that company again. But they're not going to stop me from ripping up the rule set or modifying it. That's the key thing about tabletop RPGs that these people don't really get, is that's what we do. No, a D&D game or a Chalt game or a Wretchedverse game, Castles and Crusades, name the system, it's going to differ from table to table.
True.
So, the ability to have those books and make it yours is exactly why these games were built. It's exactly why these games were promoted. It's exactly why they exist 50 years later. They don't suffer compatibility issues. The system doesn't change. The only system that changes is still sitting right in here. And if you have to have a major company that tells you how to play it, you don't have this.
Concur.
Yep.
Bluddworth, you posted the wrong link.
Did I?
Yeah, my forum is rpgsite.com, not .net.
Oh, my bad.
.net, I think, is mostly video games. It's not mine.
You see that.
Yeah, see, that's wrong.
So what is everybody working on?
Well, I can say we're gonna launch a new game today.
Yeah, what 12 new products is the Red Room working on right now?
Anything exciting coming out?
I'm just gaming, to be honest. I'm not working on anything, other than a few crafts for the channel. I'm just riding this wave of getting to game again, instead of being the eternal DM. This year is the first year I've got to game as a player in over 25 years.
Wow.
4 Against Darkness campaign. I just kicked that off because Yodano posted a picture of orcs in the snow, and I was like, that could be useful. So I started a second session. I'm going to continue that. And right now it's just going to be posting the video I shot today, and then throwing a couple shorts up there, and that's about it, really.
Well,
and still doing it wrong.
The stuff that's coming out soon. The next product of mine that's likely to come out is going to be the OSR Gonzo Companion, which is a compilation of some of the RPG Pundit Presents articles that's got all kinds of material that you can use for weird fantasy or Gonzo gaming. And for Sword and Caravan, currently in the publisher's hands for production, there's the Heroes and Villains of the Silk Road, which is a collection of the biographies and statistics of all the historical characters that appear in the Sword and Caravan book. So you'll get to see what the stats are for Richard Lionheart and Saladin and everybody else, as well as some of the really crazy stories of some of these characters. And what I'm working on right now is another small supplement for Sword and Caravan that will have wilderness encounter tables and some new, random generators for Sword and Caravan, and it'll also have stats on Asian dragons, which I for some reason didn't put into the main book. And then that's the stuff that's coming out in the short term, anyways.
I'm actually this week kicking out Star Frontiersman Volume 2, Issue 26. So we're rebooting the fan magazine for Star Frontiers.
One more thing, if for any independent creators, small studios, whatever, I've got a pinned tweet on my Twitter. You can literally just drop anything you want to promote right in there.
All right, good to know.
There's the correct site. Sorry about that. So it's therpgsite.com. All right. The other one's not a bad site either if you're into RPG video games, but there we go.
That's right. Sorry, I stepped away there for a second because Meatball had accidentally locked herself out. So.
Yes. Quite a while ago, about an hour and a half ago, someone had mentioned they wanted to see a Meatball photobomb. All right.
Wow.
And I was like, Meatball only shows, his or her. I always forget. I don't know. Her butt, or his butt, on the thing. I was like, nope, that's the only way that those occur.
She might come up here now that she's actually able to get into the house again. I don't know. I never force her to be on camera. She comes when she wants to.
I forced my pooch online haul.
Yes, that's a good way to catch additional clicks is to have a cat on screen. They cats and dogs, they tend to get more clicks than we do. For good reason. Their animals are almost universally loved. And humans not so much.
When I first started the channel, my son and we did the channel from the dinner table, and my dog would literally try to hone in on the show. We used to call him Lucy because he was always trying to get in the show, and he'd try to jump into a people chair, and because he knew we were doing something, he couldn't figure it out. And then when we moved up to the studio, now he's like, no, I don't want to be on the show anymore. So I have to grab him and wrestle him into the front of the camera. Dogs are smart.
My dog will lay next to this chair and then go to sleep and start snoring, and the microphone will pick him up. And so I got to kick him out of the room just to record.
Yes, the OGGM acknowledges that he uses his cat for views and subs. And so he's at least honest about it.
They use us.
Yeah.
They demand when they see us sitting here. Most of the time, they just demand to come and annoy us.
One of them is
one of them.
always when I'm talking to the camera, she always comes to my lap.
You only see her tail.
Yes, she was here a bit.
Yeah. So I'm not bringing my family animal onto the show because she would probably bite me while I'm trying to hold her. I don't know where they say Shih Tzus are a good family-friendly pet. Only with my wife, I guess, because she.
I think that's the people who sell Shih Tzus.
So. Well, they are a Chinese guard dog, so I guess that's the.
There you are.
That's the reason. There's Meatball.
There's Meatball. And that's it. That's what I'm going to see over it.
That's generally what we see of Meatball.
Yeah, Meatball does her own thing. I never tell my cats what to do.
No, it doesn't work with cats anyway. It's like... Okay. All right. So let's let's talk about wrapping this up here, and I am going to actually let's do the second half of this. This is a place to belly up to the table with our friends and enjoy games. I mean, you couldn't get a much more succinct way of putting it out there. And our friends is whoever you have at your table. You know what I'm saying? It's like we're all going to have different groups at our table. When we, like Tom had mentioned, all of my gaming is done online, and I have people from all over the country. I used to have people from all over the world at my table. I've had people in South America, Africa, Asia, Europe, and the United States at my table. And never did I ask, who's going to come in. I never had a quota system. It's whoever signed up is in, and you're sitting at the table, and that's what it is. And those people I've been playing with now for, almost 2 years in some cases, never once, asked them, to check off any box. They show up, they're ready to play. They're pleasant, at the table, get along with everybody else. We're a table of friends. And, I go back to the day, my very first D&D group was our DM was born here, but his family was from India. All right. We had a player who was, his family was Orthodox Jewish. We had another player that was Chinese, born in China and then came here. We had myself, basically a mutt, Italian, German, Irish, Ukrainian. All right. We had another player who was Puerto Rican and Italian. All right. And that was our gaming group, and we were all male. Did we ever say women can come here? No, we would have been like, holy crap, a girl wants to play with us. It was like, we were 11, 12, all the way up through high school players in that group. And it was like, we would have welcomed everybody at the table. And that's the way it was. Now it's like, we'll see. I'll see advertisements for, looking for players for just this group of players. I've never seen that before these last 5 years where it says, this table is just for women. This table is just for LGBTQ. This table is just for people of color. Never in the previous 35 years have I ever seen anything like that. That is just a modern, last 5 years thing that I've seen on whether it be Roll20 or Facebook or whatever. And it's a real shame to see that kind of thing being not only brought to our hobby, but being championed. And if you turn around and say, well, my table's for everyone, you're the bad guy. If you say, this table is just for friends who enjoy games, we're the bad guys for that. And to me, it's just it's the world turned upside down.
Yeah, now we're the racists. Imagine that.
It's like
Clown world.
Or the sexist, or misogynist, or exclusionary. We're excluding people by saying everybody is welcome. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard.
It's like I've said tons of times to different people. Mental gymnastics. It's not an Olympic event. Stop publicly training for it. Like seriously. Like even in that one tweet I had where I was talking about Vampire the Masquerade. There were so many leaps of logic that it was like there were times I was looking at, like I'd pull out my phone and I'd look in between, like in my break at work or something like that, and I'd be like, wow, this one ate paint chips as a kid, and I just move on because it's what it is they these people, they're the segregationists. They're the segregationists. They're racists. They're bigots. They're every istophobe they accuse everyone else of being.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it is. They're miserable. Misery loves company, and everyone else must be as miserable as them. And I'm like, not today. Plus, if you're going to call me a Nazi, I have a few questions. Like, do I have to wear a brown shirt because brown's really not my color? Do I have to wear that stupid armband? Do I goose step everywhere? Is that just during parades? I have so many questions, and none of them will answer it. Not one. Not one.
All right, so go ahead. We'll just do a round robin kind of thing and wrap this up. So, Tom, go ahead.
Sure. I was just going to say, generally, if you can't attack the message, you attack the person.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's what you see going on.
RPG Pundit?
Well, I mean, my gaming table, even as a teenager, had, a variety of people of different races. It had girls in it. I mean, by college, there were people that were, gay that were playing, and there's been nothing more socially divisive than this return to segregation that is represented by the woke left. And they try to do that in every facet of of our existence, basically. And they're trying to do that in games. And for me, it's just, it seems moronic, this idea that by hyper focusing on differences, it's a complete, but what it is it's an intentional postmodernist betrayal of the actual liberal values of equality. Where you're not, they're intentionally trying to focus on things that have nothing to do with a person's character or ability, and has everything to do with some, supposedly inherent qualities that can only end up causing harm to everybody involved. It's incredibly stupid.
All right, Miguel, Sylvia?
In terms of diversity here, there's none, I think. There's except gender diversity and probably sexual orientation, because racially, I think nerds in Portugal are mostly white. Probably there are reasons for that. I think there are, of course.
Is that just because no one wants to move to Portugal?
Yeah, there's lots of people moving, but the fact is that the Africans that were living in the ex-colonies, they started coming to Portugal in the 70s and 80s, but they had other problems, and role-playing wasn't one of their priorities.
Issue. So
it was an expensive
issue, not.
And it was also there's another reason. Role-playing is not. Never was a popular hobby here, and I don't think it will ever be. So. But there were always in my group there were always girls, at least, and no one excluded anyone. We in fact we wanted more people to come and play, but the fact is people didn't want to play.
We still have the problem today, so we have a small group because we have problems finding people to play with us.
And we prefer to play in Portuguese rather than English, so it's a bit difficult because in Portugal there's always difficulties. And nowadays there are more people playing, but most people play story games. Well, not most people, but about half people play either story games or Vampire or Dungeons and Dragons, and
5th edition,
and then, 5th edition. And then there's a small amount of people playing other stuff like us. So it's just a group of friends.
All right.
On my channel, hold on a second. My dog's being. A leaf blew by our house, so he has to bark at it. my son and I, we've our channel's had a very simple motto since the very beginning: play the games you love with the people you love, and everything's going to be right with your world.
Mhm.
It's really that simple. We don't care what you look like. We don't care about any of that superficial nonsense. We're here to play some games, have some fun. That's what life's all about. Let's just keep it simple. And 2023 is right here at our doorsteps. Let's just continue that sentiment and see what happens.
All right, and last comment. Raven, you went last comment, or you did that already?
Actually, I concur with that. Play the games
Yeah.
you love with the people you love. If you do bring in someone else, don't worry about vetting their politics, because it should all be about the game. And
Yep.
if they can't leave their politics at home, if they can't leave the real world stuff at home, they don't belong at your table. Gatekeep your tables. You can't gatekeep the hobby. You damn sure can gatekeep your table though.
Yep. All right, everybody. I'm going to wrap this up. We're around the 2.5 hour mark. So, really great stream. A lot of good comments and everything. A lot of comments in the section there. And, I hope that, this whole thing blows over, very quickly. And,
This too shall pass.
it will fade. And, I'm glad to see that, there was far more support for Troll Lord games than actually against it, as evidenced by the fact that they had to retweet and go to their own separate little, caves and talk about it there. And, it's good to see the OSR come together and just try to shore up our own walls against this. And it's one point that I wanted to finish off on. I think RPG Pundit actually kind of touched on it a little bit. There's a difference between liberals, like the classic liberalism, where you used to see a lot more of that in the creative spaces, where just let people play what they want to play and enjoy it, and just be a much more open and freer society type of liberalism. That I don't want this to seem like we're pushing against that. There's also nothing wrong with when people say, oh well, it's social justice is in there. No one's saying that social justice is wrong. That like there shouldn't be justice in our social spaces. I'm saying, like, people should be treated with a an element of equality, and treated fairly and treated humanely and treated, that's oftentimes it's like, oh, you're against social justice warriors. So it's like, well, it's a very different thing, once you put that warrior tag on it, because you're no longer, just someone who supports, equality and all of those, fine values to have. Now you're taking it and you're taking the worst interpretation of it that you can, the segregation interpretation of it, the attack interpretation of it instead. So I just think that it's important for us to come out and say, this is where we stand, and we're not going to have our message dictated by someone else, and defined by someone else, rather than coming out there and actually saying, this is what we believe in. We believe in playing games and enjoying our time with our friends and welcoming everybody at the table, and that should never be seen as exclusionary. And so I'm just going to leave it there. If anybody else has anything to jump in on, but if not, thank you everyone for joining in. Tom, yep. So everyone, thanks for joining, and we'll certainly look to do this again. Hopefully not under the same circumstances. Maybe we can, get together and talk about our future projects and focus on those things. I know a lot of everybody here has things coming out in the near future and working on big projects. And that's something else that we should certainly help each other in doing, is highlighting all the positive things that we're doing out there for the hobby as well. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you again, everyone. Happy New Year to everyone. And, looking forward to 2023 being a very productive, healthy, and, an enjoyable year. All right. Take care, everyone. And